In a world where screens never sleep and silence feels uncomfortable, one young man begins to realize something unsettling. What if the device in your hand knows your fears, your desires, and your weaknesses better than you do? This is not a story about technology. It is a story about control, identity, and the quiet power of choice. Step into a world of wonders with Tales with Jamie. Don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. This is the phone that knew too much. Before the sun rose over the city, before the horns began their daily arguments and the streets shook themselves awake, Timi's hand moved. It moved without thought, without effort, as though it had learned the habit on its own. His eyes were still heavy with sleep when his fingers found the smooth glass beside his pillow. The screen lit up instantly, flooding the dim room with a pale blue glow. Notifications stacked themselves like impatient visitors' messages, updates, reminders, stories from people he barely knew, but somehow checked every day. Only then did Timi sit up. Outside his small apartment, the city was slowly breathing itself into motion. A distant generator hummed. Somewhere, a neighbor coughed. A bus conductor shouted a destination into the morning air. But inside the room, the world was already loud. Timi scrolled. He scrolled through other people's mornings, smiling faces, gym selfies, motivational quotes, perfectly plated breakfasts. He scrolled through news that tightened his chest and jokes that made him laugh without joy. He told himself it was normal. Everyone did this. The phone helped him keep up. It kept him informed, connected, alert. Without it, he felt behind, lost, incomplete. At least that was what he believed. He showered with the phone playing videos on the sink. He dressed while reading messages that demanded his attention before he had even fully woken up. When he finally stepped outside, the sun was already higher, but his mind felt strangely crowded. As he joined the flow of people moving through the streets, heads bent, fingers tapping, screens glowing, Timi didn't notice how similar they all looked. A city full of bodies moving forward, while minds lived somewhere else. On the bus, he barely looked up. Advertisements passed by the window, but he saw better ones on his screen. Conversations rose and fell around him, but he was listening to a voice coming from a pair of small white earbuds. The phone told him what to think about next, what to want, what to worry about, who he should be. And Timi listened. He didn't know when it happened. There was no announcement, no warning, but somewhere between the scrolling and the tapping, the phone stopped being just a tool. It became a companion, a guide, a quiet authority in his life. By the time the bus reached his stop, Timi felt tired already. Not from work, not from movement, but from the invisible weight of too much information pressed into his mind before the day had even begun. He stepped down onto the road, phone still in hand, unaware that this small glowing object so familiar, so trusted had begun to learn him, and that it was paying very close attention. Days passed and Timi noticed something strange. The phone seemed to know him better than anyone else. It learned when he woke up, when he skipped breakfast, when he lingered on certain posts longer than others. It suggested videos and messages that perfectly matched his mood, sometimes comforting, sometimes just unsettling enough to make him restless. At first, Timi thought it was clever, almost magical. He laughed when it reminded him of an unfinished task or suggested a song he wanted to hear before he even typed it. But slowly, the amusement faded. The phone began showing him things that made him doubt himself, friends achieving more, strangers with bigger smiles, accomplishments he hadn't reached. The comparisons crept in silently like water seeping into cracks in a wall. He would scroll for hours trying to find distraction, trying to feel something other than the faint ache of inadequacy. Each notification buzzed like a tiny pulse of expectation, pulling him back, telling him he needed to see more, know more, be more. Even in crowded spaces, Timi felt the pull. On the bus, at work, in cafes, his eyes were always drawn to that small glowing rectangle. He noticed less about the world around him, the warmth of sunlight, the chatter of people, the smell of fresh bread from a corner bakery. Life had become background noise, and yet he could not stop. He told himself he was in control. He told himself he was just using the tool. But deep down, he sensed that the phone was shaping his thoughts, guiding his feelings, even deciding what he worried about. One evening, after hours of scrolling through posts, reading advice he didn't ask for, and watching stories of lives far brighter than his own, Timi paused. The room was quiet. The city outside hummed faintly. The phone lay in his hand, glowing softly. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't in months: emptiness. He realized he had become dependent not on the people he loved, not on work, not even on his own ideas, but on a device that reflected his fears back to him, dressed as convenience. And in that quiet, Timi began to wonder, who am I when this is gone? What remains of me beyond the screen? Night had fallen over the city, and the apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of electricity and the distant sounds of traffic far below. Timi sat at his small desk, his phone glowing in his hand like a tiny lantern in the darkness. The light painted his face in pale shades of blue, highlighting the lines of fatigue he hadn't noticed until now. His eyes, once lively and curious, felt heavy, almost distant. He scrolled and scrolled. The phone offered him more than he could ever ask for: videos of strangers living perfect lives, articles hinting at what he should be doing, and posts that reminded him of everything he hadn't achieved. It knew the questions he hadn't voiced, the fears he hadn't spoken aloud. At first, it had felt convenient, even comforting. Now, the convenience had a weight, an invisible weight pressing on his chest. It wasn't physical, but it made him tired in ways sleep could not fix. The next day, Timi went to meet his friends. They laughed, shared stories, and joked about their days. But Timi was only half there. His eyes flicked to his phone every few minutes. Each notification tugged at him, demanded attention, and whispered that he might be missing something more important than the moment he was in. By the time he returned home, the feeling had grown heavier. The room was dark, the only light coming from the phone now resting on his desk. Timi leaned back in his chair and looked at it. The device, so small and familiar, felt almost alive. It had learned him. It knew his insecurities and played them like a tune he could not stop humming. Later, as the city outside his window slept, Timi walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The reflection staring back at him seemed different. Smaller. Distracted. Hollow. The glow from the phone, now resting on the counter, reflected faintly in his eyes. For the first time, he truly saw the cost of surrendering his attention. He picked up the phone again, then put it down, just for a few seconds. The silence hit him like a wave. It was strange, unfamiliar, and yet calming. For the first time in months, Timi wondered, maybe there's more to life than this glow. And in that thought, a seed of curiosity and hope began to grow. The first time Timi left his phone face down on the table, his fingers twitched. Not because the device made a sound it didn't, but because his body expected it to. His hand hovered over the smooth surface, waiting for a vibration that never came. The room felt larger without the glow. Silence stretched itself across the walls, unfamiliar and unsettling. Timi shifted in his chair, suddenly aware of the sound of his own breathing, the ticking of a distant clock, the hum of the city outside his window. His mind grew restless. Thoughts rose like dust in the air, unfinished dreams, mistakes he had ignored, questions he had buried beneath endless scrolling. Without the phone to distract him, there was nowhere to run. He picked it up again. The screen came alive instantly, flooding the room with light and comfort. Relief washed over him, followed quickly by guilt. He knew this pattern now. The phone quieted his thoughts, but only by replacing them with noise. Days passed, and Timi tried again. Sometimes he succeeded, leaving the phone behind during short walks, eating meals without checking messages, sitting in silence for a few minutes longer than before. Other times he failed, reaching for the screen at the smallest hint of boredom or discomfort. Each attempt revealed the truth. The phone had not only occupied his time, it had trained him. Trained him to avoid stillness. Trained him to fear boredom. Trained him to seek constant stimulation. One evening, during a power outage, the city fell into darkness. Generators roared to life in the distance, but Timi's apartment remained quiet. His phone, drained of battery, lay useless on the table. There was no escape this time. Candlelight flickered against the walls as Timi sat alone. Without screens, the night felt deeper, more honest. He listened to the sounds outside: footsteps, distant laughter, the occasional bark of a dog. For the first time in a long while, Timi felt fully present. It was uncomfortable, but it was real. And as the candle burned lower, Timi realized something important. The noise he feared wasn't in the world around him. It was inside him. Change did not arrive like a storm. It came softly, almost unnoticed, in moments so small Timi nearly ignored them. It began one morning when he woke up and did not reach for his phone immediately. His eyes opened to the ceiling, to the pale light slipping through the curtains, to the sound of life outside beginning its daily rhythm. For a few seconds, he simply lay there, and nothing went wrong. Encouraged, Timi sat up and stretched. The phone remained where he had left it the night before, silent, dark, waiting. He felt the familiar pull, but it was weaker now, like an old habit losing its grip. As the days passed, Timi started claiming back tiny pieces of his life. He ate meals without scrolling. He walked short distances without earbuds. He allowed boredom to exist without rushing to escape it. At first, the moments felt awkward. Time moved slowly. His thoughts wandered. But slowly, something unexpected happened. He began to notice things. The warmth of the sun on his skin during his walks. The rhythm of his footsteps on the pavement. The way the city breathed not as noise, but as presence. At work, he found himself focusing longer, thinking deeper. Ideas came without being prompted by a screen. Conversations felt fuller, less rushed. He listened not while waiting to check his phone, but fully, honestly. One evening, Timi sat alone with a notebook. The phone lay nearby, untouched. He began to write not for an audience, not for likes, but for himself. Thoughts poured out freely, messy and real. For the first time in a long while, he felt grounded. The phone was still part of his life. He hadn't banished it or declared war against it. But something had shifted. He was choosing. And in those small choices, repeated daily, Timi felt a quiet strength returning. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, the kind of strength that lasts. Just when Timi thought he had found his balance, life tested him. One afternoon, a message arrived. Important. Urgent. The kind that made the heart beat faster. Timi felt the old instinct rise, the need to check, refresh, respond immediately. The phone buzzed again, insistent, familiar. For a moment, he froze. The room seemed to hold its breath. Timi looked at the phone in his hand and noticed how easily it could pull him back into old habits. One message could open the door to hours of distraction, comparison, and noise. But this time, he paused. He read the message once. Then he placed the phone down, not in anger, not in fear, but with intention. He finished what he was doing before responding. He stayed present in the moment, trusting that the world would not collapse if he wasn't instantly available. And it didn't. Later that evening, Timi reflected on how far he had come. The phone was still part of his life, still useful, still powerful, but it no longer decided his worth or commanded his attention. He had learned something important. Control was not about rejection. It was about choice. The city outside buzzed as always, screens glowed in countless hands, and life rushed forward at its usual pace. But inside, Timi felt steady. He knew now that silence was not emptiness. Boredom was not danger, and presence was a gift he could give himself. The phone remained a tool, and Timi remained himself. Technology is meant to serve us, not replace us. Wisdom lies in knowing when to connect and when to step away.